4 hours of twisting mountain roads, one dented coffee cup, and a half-broken GPS brought me to what was supposed to be my new life. The air was sharp and clean enough to slice lungs. Long pines rose like dark sentinels, and in the distance, my cabin rested on a small hill. Quiet, lonely, promising. It was my fresh start after the ugly divorce. My reward for surviving a storm I didn't think I'd live through. $12,000 at a county tax auction. Clean title, no liens, and best of all, solitude. At least, that's what I believed until a voice cut through the quiet the second I stepped out of my truck. Step away from the property. This belongs to the HOA. The echo bounced off the mountains like a bad omen. I froze mid-stride, one boot still hanging in the air, more bewildered than afraid. HOA in the middle of nowhere? Before I could answer, a woman stormed out of the cabin, the one I had bought, gripping a clipboard like it was a sword. Mid-50s, hair lacquered into permanent authority, red blazer sharp enough to cut fabric, and a coffee mug with glittering letters that read, HOA President Haley Turner. I stared, unsure whether to laugh or call the county right there. Behind her, a shiny SUV gleamed in my driveway. 2 expensive bikes leaned on the railing and smoke curled from the chimney. My chimney, ma'am, I began carefully, holding up the deed like a cross at a vampire. I think there's a misunderstanding. Her smirk appeared with military precision. The only misunderstanding is you thinking you own this land. This cabin falls under HOA jurisdiction. My heart sank, then hardened. I hadn't bought a cabin. Apparently I'd bought a war zone. Before I could breathe, she crossed her arms, posture screaming, dictator at brunch. You people always think you can buy your way into our community, she said. Your community? I glanced around. There's no community here. The nearest mailbox is 5 miles away. Haley gave a dramatic sigh worthy of stage lights. Oh, Frank, don't be so dramatic. The Mountain Vista HOA recently expanded its jurisdiction. This property is now under our covenant. We maintain order up here. I looked at the sagging roof and the cracked chimney stones. Order? The place is falling apart. She ignored the sarcasm. You'll need written permission from me before you can begin structural repairs. We have aesthetic guidelines. Behind me, Miguel, my friend and weekend helper, snorted. She's serious, dude, he whispered. Haley's eyes sharpened. I heard that. From inside, a lanky young man, Logan, as I'd later learn, her son, appeared holding a phone. Just documenting this, he announced solemnly. For HOA records. HOA records, Miguel repeated under his breath, shaking his head. She's running a government out here. Haley gestured toward the line of trees. As you'll notice, we've installed boundary markers. You're currently standing on common ground. Trespassing applies. I turned my eyes to the markers. They were plastic garden stakes topped with laminated pamphlets, reading Mountain Vista HOA, property in review. I counted to 3. Ma'am, I have the deed right here. I paid for this cabin through a tax auction. You can confirm it with the county. Oh, I already have, she said sweetly, and you'll be hearing from them if you attempt to enter without board approval. Then she slammed the door in my face. For a while, Miguel and I just stood there, mouths open, listening to the wind swirl through and I emphasize my trees. Smoke drifted from the chimney, warm and deliberate. My wood, my stove, my patience evaporating. So, now what, boss? Miguel asked. Now, I said, pulling out my camera. We document everything. We snapped photos, the SUV plate, the fake signs, the window curtains that clearly weren't there in the listing. I could already taste the lawsuit. When we turned down the trail, a new sign nailed to a pine stopped me cold. Private property. Show enforcement in effect. Below it, in small italics, H. Turner, President. That's when it clicked. This wasn't confusion. It was occupation. That night, I called the county recorder's office. A woman named Denise answered. This is Frank Carter, I said, reading off the parcel number. I bought the woodland cabin last month, but there's a family living there claiming HOA rights. Long pause, then a sigh. Please don't tell me it's the Turners again. The Turners? Yes, Haley Turner. She's been a problem for years. Claims land for her HOA even when it's outside the official boundary. So what do I do? You'll have to file a civil eviction. Sheriff won't touch it unless there's a criminal element. She literally told me she runs the HOA. Oh, she believes it, Denise said flatly. She's self-appointed president of half the mountain. By morning, 3 new messages waited on my phone. First message, a stern male voice. Mr. Carter, this is Deputy Rick Davis, Teller County. Please avoid further contact with Mrs. Turner. She's filed a harassment complaint. Resolved through civil court. Second message, Haley herself, smooth and condescending. Frank, hostility is unnecessary. We value community harmony. Submit your remodeling plans for board approval and we'll review them. Third, Miguel's text, all caps. Bro, check Facebook. There it was. Haley Turner's post on the Woodland HOA page with my picture, clearly taken by her son. Attention neighbors. This man is attempting to take possession of community property. Report any trespassing. Legal action pending. The comments were merciless. Another city guy. Probably trying to flip our mountain. Does he even have a permit? Permit for walking on my land. I laughed, but it came out shaky. Beneath the absurdity was something sharp and real. I was trapped in a game I hadn't agreed to play. The next weekend I went back alone. No Miguel, no diplomacy. This time, stealth and evidence. I parked down the road and hiked in, camera ready. From the trees I saw the cabin had transformed. Flower boxes under the window, solar lights up the steps, a shiny sign by the door. Turner Residence. HOA managed unbelievable. I filmed everything. The new mailbox, the utility meter, even footprints in the fresh mud. When I circled to the back porch, I spotted a small camera nailed under the eave, same brand I used for site security. Its red light blinked, watching me. Then came her voice, amplified through hidden speakers, smug as ever. Frank Carter, you are trespassing on HOA property. This footage will be submitted to our attorney. I couldn't help it. I laughed up at the lens. Send it to the owner while you're at it. Her voice cut back, hard and cold. We don't recognize your ownership. And that's when I understood. Haley Turner wasn't just bluffing. She was rewriting reality. When I rolled back into Denver that night, Miguel was sitting on my stoop with 2 beers. Tell me you didn't get arrested, he said. Not yet, I muttered. But I met the queen of the mountain. He grinned. So what's the plan? I opened my laptop, scrolling through photos like a detective piecing together a crime scene. We fight fire with paperwork. She wants to live by bylaws? Great, let's bring her the real ones. Tax office, licensing bureau, state records, all of them. Miguel laughed. That's my guy. But inside I wasn't laughing. Haley's confidence wasn't random, it was rehearsed. She'd done this before, definitely with other victims. And I was next on her list. As I uploaded the evidence, a new email notification popped up. Subject, notice of community violation from HOA Mount Vista Eggmail.com. Dear Mr. Carter, you are in violation of Section 14.2, unauthorized entry onto HOA managed property. Failure to comply will result in daily fines of $250. Sincerely, Haley Turner, President. Mountain Vista, Ho no letterhead. No legal watermark. Just sheer arrogance in Times New Roman. I leaned back in my chair, half amused, half furious. Congratulations, Haley, I muttered. You just sent a fraudulent legal notice to a man who collects evidence for a living. That night, I made myself a promise. I would take back my cabin. And when I did, I'd make sure Haley Turner and her paper crown empire collapsed with it. The next few days were a blur of late-night coffee and PDF files. I printed county plats, property codes, HOA registration laws. A friend at the Colorado Real Estate Commission confirmed what I already knew. Frank, he said, your lot has no registered HOA. You own it outright. She's bluffing. Bluffing? I repeated. Then she bluffs like it's a career. Because when I drove up again that following weekend, her operation had expanded. The SUV was gone, replaced by a rental truck plastered with vinyl letters. Haley's Mountain Maintenance. A new mailbox stood proudly by the trail, and a woman I didn't recognize knelt in the soil, planting marigolds under the window. I stepped out carefully. Excuse me, I called. Do you live here? She looked up, cheerful but wary. Oh no, I'm just hired by the HOA to beautify community lots. You must be the contractor. The contractor. I blinked. I'm the owner. Her smile froze and she slowly took off her gloves. Oh, I was told the HOA took possession for unpaid assessments. Assessments, I repeated, incredulous. This cabin was abandoned for 6 years. Who exactly is collecting assessments? Mother Nature. She mumbled something about not wanting trouble, packed up her tools, and left in a hurry. That's when I noticed something taped to the door. A bright yellow HO violation notice printed on cheap paper. Notice of non-compliance, unauthorized structural work, and failure to pay community fees. $1,200. Signed, Haley Turner, HOA President. I ripped it off the door and stared at it. It even had a fake watermark, something she'd clearly printed on her home. Computer. Miguel pulled up behind me a few minutes later in his old Chevy. Man, you look like you just saw a ghost. I think I'm living in one, I muttered. A haunted HOA, he glanced around. You sure this woman's not running a cult? Feels like it, I said. Except the sermon is property codes and fines. That night back in Denver, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by documents. The more I read, the more absurd it became. Colorado law states that adverse possession, the right to claim ownership after occupying a property, requires at least 18 years of continuous public and hostile possession. Haley had at most been 36 months. I dug deeper. Property taxes still unpaid before I bought it. Utilities connected only recently under the name Haley M. Turner. And then came the discovery that turned irritation into fury. She had listed the cabin on Airbnb under the name Mountain Vista Ho Lodge. Description: beautiful HOA managed cabin with lake views, security patrol, and quiet neighborhood. Rate $195 a night. Host Haley T. Ho Queen is scrolled through dozens of reviews. She was so helpful with check-in. Great location. The HOA keeps everything clean. President Haley even gave us local hiking passes. She'd been making thousands on my property. Miguel whistled when I showed him. That's not squatting, bro. That's entrepreneurship. Yeah, I said darkly until the IRS gets involved. The next morning, I walked into the Teller County clerk's office with a folder thick enough to choke a printer. The woman behind the counter looked up. "Morning, can I help you?" "Yeah," I said. "I need to verify property boundaries and confirm there's no HOA overlay on parcel 07 to 142. She typed for a moment, then frowned. "We've had 3 calls about that parcel this week. One from a Haley Turner." "That's the one." She clicked through the files. "Mr. Carter, your property is fully independent. No HOA affiliation." But she hesitated. "Mrs. Turner filed a notice of intent to annex with our office." "Annex? You mean she's trying to expand the HOA's territory?" "Yes. It's not valid without approval, but she submitted it anyway." "Wants your cabin recognized as Community Parcel B?" I laughed out loud. "Community Parcel B? It's a cabin, not Disneyland." The clerk sighed. "She does this a lot. Usually the homeowners give up. She scares them with bylaws and fines until they walk away." Well, I said she picked the wrong guy to scare. By midweek, the situation had escalated. A letter arrived in the mail, registered and everything. Final warning continued. "Trespassing and harassment of HOA members will result in legal action. Please remove your vehicle from community access roads immediately. Mountain Vista HOA Legal Affairs." No address, no law firm header, just a fake seal of an eagle holding a gavel. Miguel couldn't stop laughing. "She's got her own stationery now." "She's escalating," I said, "which means she's afraid." But Haley wasn't done. Later that night, my phone pinged with an alert. Someone had mentioned my name on Facebook Marketplace. There it was again, my cabin listed under the name Mountain Vista HOA Rentals available for long-term lease. That's when I decided to fight back. Not emotionally, not physically, but legally and publicly. I gathered every piece of proof I had. The Airbnb listings, screenshots of the fake violation notices, her annexation attempt, the letter from HOA Legal Affairs, photos of her family occupying my property. Then I called someone who specialized in people like Haley. Her name was Rebecca Moore, fraud attorney, mid-30s, sharp as glass, and twice as dangerous. She listened patiently as I explained the situation, occasionally tapping her pen. When I finished, she said, "Frank, what you're dealing with isn't just trespassing. This is organized fraud under the guise of HOA authority." "She's not even part of a real HOA." I said, "Exactly. She creates the illusion of one. Fake meetings, fake fees, fake bylaws, then either forces owners out or monetizes the property. It's a new flavor of scam. So what do?" Rebecca smiled. "We let her dig her own hole. I'll contact the state tax board and the real estate division. Meanwhile, you keep recording everything. And Frank, yeah, don't lose your temper. Women like her want confrontation. It feeds their narrative." 2 days later, Haley tried to bait me again. When I returned to check the property line markers, I found her waiting perfectly staged, Logan filming from the porch like a director. "Mr. Carter," she called out, her voice syrupy, but loud enough for the camera. "You've been warned multiple times. Why are you harassing HOA members again?" I kept my cool, just confirming my boundaries. Literally. She stepped closer, pretending to whisper, though she knew the microphone would pick it up. "You think the law is going to help you? The sheriff's on my board." I smiled thinly. "Then maybe I'll invite the IRS to your next meeting." That wiped the smirk off her face for about half a second. She recovered fast, barking at Logan. "Get that on record. He's threatening a federal agency." I turned and walked away, giving the camera a little wave. "Make sure you tag me this time," I called over my shoulder. "It'll save the reporters some research." When I got home that night, I poured a whiskey, sat at my desk, and watched every second of the footage. Haley's control wasn't just about property. It was psychological, the way she used authority titles and fear to bend people. She genuinely believed she was the law. And for years, she'd probably gotten away with it. But not this time. I uploaded all my documentation into a shared folder with Rebecca. Labeled it Operation HOA Queen. Her reply came within minutes. Perfect. I'm sending the IRS fraud. Liaison in the state's tax. Investigation team, everything. Sittite. This is going to get interesting. I leaned back, staring out the window. The night sky over Denver was clear, dotted with stars. Somewhere up that mountain, Haley Turner was probably planning her next move, sipping tea, telling her fake board how she'd outsmarted another city man. But she didn't know that every file, every photo, every recorded word was now in the hands of people far scarier than me. Because if there's one thing I've learned about HOA presidents like Haley, it's this. They love control. But the moment you show them, they're not the authority they break. And soon I was going to break her. If Haley Turner wanted a war built on paperwork and manipulation, she'd picked the wrong man to mess with. I wasn't a lawyer, but I'd spent 20 years managing construction contracts, government bids, and federal compliance paperwork. Manipulating the system was her specialty. Weaponizing it was mine. The morning after I sent everything to my attorney, Rebecca Moore, I woke up to a text from her. Frank, meet me at the courthouse at 11 hours. Bring your deed, tax receipts, and a sense of humor. That last part was important because when you're up against a self-appointed HOA president with a god complex, you either laugh or you lose your mind. The Teller County Courthouse was a squat brick building that smelled like coffee and bureaucracy. Rebecca greeted me with a grin and a stack of folders. Here's the fun part, she said, handing me one. I've confirmed that Mrs. Turner's HOA isn't registered anywhere. It's literally just a Facebook group. A Facebook group? I asked. You mean she's running her empire from social media? Yep, Rebecca said, complete with fake bylaws copied from a California neighborhood association and a membership fee Venmo link. She's bold, I muttered. She's delusional, Rebecca corrected. But that's good for us. Delusion leaves paper trails. She spread out several documents on the table, screenshots, utility records, her Airbnb listings, and the most important piece, the notice of annexation she'd filed with the county. Rebecca tapped the header. This thing's riddled with errors. Wrong legal description, missing signatures, no authorization. She basically committed perjury by signing this as a registered HOA president. So she's toast, I said. Rebecca smiled. Not yet, but she's going to be very warm soon. We drove up the mountain that afternoon, papers in hand. When we arrived, Haley was outside pruning a bush that didn't even belong to her. She froze when she saw us. Mrs. Turner Rebecca called pleasantly. I'm Rebecca Moore, legal counsel for Mr. Carter. Haley's posture stiffened. Oh, I see. You brought a lawyer. How charming. You're both trespassing on community grounds. Rebecca smiled the way only lawyers can, friendly enough to be polite, cold enough to draw blood. Funny you should mention that because I just came from the county office where they confirmed that this land she held up the deed is privately owned by my client. You, Mrs. Turner, are illegally occupying and profiting from it. Haley's jaw clenched. You can't talk to me like that. I'm the president of what Rebecca asked sweetly. Your front porch, Miguel, who had tagged along purely for entertainment, tried to muffle a laugh behind me. Haley glared. This is harassment. You'll be hearing from HOA Legal Affairs. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. Oh, you mean your Gmail account? We've already contacted the State Fraud Division. They were fascinated by your logo. For the first time since I'd met her, Haley looked unsure. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Rebecca leaned forward, voice calm but sharp. You have 24 hours to vacate this property and cease all business activity. If not, we'll file a civil suit for unlawful occupation, tax evasion, and fraud. And Mrs. Turner, Haley's eyes darted between us. What? Rebecca smiled. You might want to delete your Airbnb account. We left her standing in the driveway, red-faced and shaking. I thought maybe, just maybe, that would end it. But that night, things took a darker turn. At 9:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. You think you can take this from me? I built this community. You'll regret it. 30 minutes later, a photo came through, a shot of my truck parked outside my apartment building in Denver. I called Rebecca. She's following me. Rebecca didn't sound surprised. Classic escalation. Keep everything. Don't respond. I'll notify local law enforcement. I didn't sleep that night. The image of Haley's perfectly manicured smile haunted me. For someone who lived by HOA rules, she didn't seem to respect the law much. The next morning, I woke to another surprise. Haley had filed a restraining order against me. According to the complaint, I had stalked, intimidated, and verbally threatened her and her family. Attached were edited videos from Logan's phone spliced to make it look like I was yelling aggressively. Rebecca laughed when she saw them. She's trying to flip the narrative. It's her favorite gameplay. The victim gained sympathy, control thestery. The county judge denied the order after reviewing the unedited footage I'd provided. But the damage was done. Rumors spread fast in small mountain towns. By the weekend, social media was full of posts like HOA president harassed by outsider. Local woman fights off aggressive investor. Turner family facing trauma after property dispute. The comments were merciless. Some called me greedy. Others called me dangerous. But I knew something. Haley didn't truth leave's fingerprints. Rebecca and I doubled down. She drafted formal complaints to the Colorado Department of Revenue and the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, attaching screenshots of the Airbnb payouts under Haley's name and the fraudulent HOA fee transfers from tenants. Within a week, both agencies acknowledged receipt. Then one morning, Rebecca called, her voice crackling with excitement. "They're auditing her, Frank. IRS just opened a preliminary case." I smiled for the first time in days. "You mean the Queen's about to be dethroned?" "Oh, more than that," she said. "She's about to find out what happens when you claim tax exemptions on property you don't own." When we returned to the cabin the following week, the place was quieter. No more cars, no more fake flower boxes, but the damage inside told the real story. Broken glass ripped drywall mold from a burst pipe. It looked like someone had tried to destroy the evidence of ever living there. Then Miguel spotted something on the floor, a stack of mail half burned in a metal bin. He pulled out the least damaged envelope and read the name Harold Grant. I frowned. "Who's that?" "Maybe the old downer," Miguel said. We kept digging. Under a loose floorboard near the fireplace, we found a small metal box sealed with duct tape. Inside were medical files, a faded photo of an elderly man, and a life insurance document naming Haley Turner as beneficiary. Rebecca went pale when she saw it. "Frank, this isn't just property fraud anymore." "What do you mean?" She handed me a paper. Harold Grant was declared dead 2 years ago. Natural causes. But this insurance form, it's dated 2 months after his death, and signed by Haley. I stared at the signature. The same looping cursive she used on her fake HOA notices. "She forged it," Rebecca nodded. "And probably more than one." The weight of it hit me hard. This wasn't a power-hungry neighbor or a delusional homeowner. This was a full-blown criminal operation hiding behind the mask of community service. That evening, we turned everything over to FBI agent Luis Martinez, who had been assigned to financial crimes in the region. He listened quietly as Rebecca explained the situation, then asked to keep the documents. "This woman's not just running scams," he said. "She's creating legal fictions to launder stolen assets. The HOA structure gives her legitimacy. That's how she hides the money." He looked up at me. "You just cracked open something bigger than a property dispute, Mr. Carter." For the first time in weeks, I felt the shift, the power tipping back in my favor. Haley wanted to play Queen of the Mountain. Now the mountain had a new set of rules, federal ones. When I left the FBI field office that night, the Denver ski line gleamed under the fading orange sky. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something close to peace. But as I reached my truck, I noticed a folded piece of paper under the wiper blade. It was an HOA violation notice soaked from the rain, written in Haley's unmistakable handwriting. "Final warning. You may own the deed, but the mountain belongs to me." I stared at it for a long time, a chill running down my spine. Haley Turner wasn't done. Not yet, but neither was I. I'd like to say that after the FBI got involved, things calmed down. That justice marched up that mountain with a badge and a clipboard and told Haley Turner to pack her red blazer and go. But people like Haley don't retreat. They doubled down. 2 days after meeting Agent Martinez, he got an alert from one of my trail cameras near the cabin. "Motion detected." When I opened the feed, I saw 2 figures in the dark. Logan Turner, her son, and another man I didn't recognize. They were hauling something heavy from the trunk of a car. I zoomed in. It was a toilet still boxed from Home Depot. Miguel, watching over my shoulder, squinted. "Please tell me they're not trying to install plumbing at 1 Nos in the morning." "No," I muttered. "They're staging damage." Sure enough, 2 hours later, my cameras caught them smashing windows, kicking holes in the walls, and pouring water onto the floor. Logan even positioned his phone to record narrating property neglected by new owner. Clear signs of abandonment. HOA may need to seize control. I sat there watching, jaw tight. She was building her defense. If the feds came knocking, she'd claimed the place was a disaster when she found it. But what she didn't know was that I had 12 hours of continuous footage showing exactly who did the damage with timestamps, GPS data, and her son's voice bragging about teaching Carter a lesson. It wasn't evidence anymore. It was a confession. By morning, I was at the sheriff's office in Woodland Park. The deputy at the desk, a young guy named Will, glanced at the USB I handed him. Security footage, vandalism, criminal mischief, maybe intimidation. "I said, I need a report filed." He slid it into the computer and watched a few seconds before whistling. "That's Logan Turner, right? Mrs. Turner's boy." "Yeah, you know them." He nodded grimly. "Everyone around here knows Haley. She calls the sheriff's office more than we call her. She's had 5 community patrol complaints this month. Community patrol will smirked. She drives around the neighborhood writing fake parking tickets. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Unreal. He typed up the report. We'll forward this to the DA. But just so you know, the sheriff's still tight with Haley. You might want to make copies already, did I said, tapping my briefcase. 2 for the FBI, 1 for the IRS, and 1 for YouTube if this all goes south. Will chuckled. Smart man. By the time I got home, the situation had gone viral again. Haley had posted a tearful video titled, "Local HOA President Harassed by Angry Investor." In the video, she sat on her porch wearing a neck brace, the cabin behind her looking like a war zone, which ironically she'd created. She dabbed her eyes dramatically. I just wanted to keep our community safe from greedy developers. Now my family's traumatized. My son's been threatened, our property destroyed. The comment section was a sea of sympathy. Stay strong, Haley. Typical corporate man thinks money buys morals. HOA stands with you. Miguel texted me. She's playing the victim again. Classic Karen move. Rebecca called an hour later, sounding exhausted but amused. She's good. I'll give her that. She's got half the county crying for her and the other half ready to sue her. But don't worry. I've sent everything to the FBI's evidence division. Martinez said anything yet? I asked. He's reviewing the insurance documents. Apparently this isn't the first property she's pulled this on. There are at least 3 other cabins in her jurisdiction that mysteriously changed hands. Figures. I said she doesn't run an HOA. She runs a real estate Ponzi scheme with a picket fence. That night I got another message. This one from an unfamiliar email. Subject line, "We can help each other." The sender was Logan Turner. He wrote, "Mr. Carter, my mom's going too far. If you agree to drop this case, I can make sure you get your property back undamaged. I can even share some documents that might interest you. There's money involved. We can both win." I showed it to Rebecca the next morning. "He's fishing," she said, "trying to see what you know. Don't respond." But she also looked thoughtful. "Still, if he's offering evidence, it means he's scared. That family's cracking." She was right. Because the very next day, Samantha Turner, Haley's daughter, the quiet one I'd only seen once during my first encounter, showed up at Rebecca's office unannounced. She looked pale, exhausted eyes darting nervously. "My mother's insane," she said bluntly. "She's planning something worse. You need to stop her." Rebecca motioned for me to join the meeting. Samantha clutched her phone, trembling. She hired a group of bikers from Creek. Said if the government tries to seize the property, she'll burn it down. She already bought gasoline and propane tanks. I felt my stomach drop. "You're saying she's planning arson?" "Yes," Samantha whispered. "She told me, if I can't have it, nobody can." Rebecca immediately called Agent Martinez, who promised to move fast. "We'll secure the site and intercept anyone heading up the mountain." Samantha looked at me, tears brimming. "Please don't think we're all like her. I just want this to end." I nodded. "You did the right thing." That night, a storm rolled over the mountain. Dark clouds, lightning flashing like camera bulbs. Agent Martinez called at 10:12 p.m. "We've got eyes on her. She's at the cabin. There's movement near the shed. My team's moving in." I held my breath. The next few minutes felt endless. Then static, a muffled voice. FBI dropped the canister, followed by shouting a crash and the sound of someone screaming. When Martinez called back, his tone was clipped but calm. "She tried to light the propane. We stopped her just in time. No one hurt. We've taken her and Logan into custody." I closed my eyes, exhaling a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. 2 days later, I stood outside the now sealed cabin as investigators combed through the wreckage. Rain had washed the mountain clean, but the yard still smelled faintly of gasoline. Martinez approached, holding a clear evidence bag. Inside was a notebook labeled HOA Operations Confidential. He flipped it open to a page covered in neat, cursive handwriting lists of names, addresses, and bank accounts. "Looks like she was running this scam across 4 counties," he said, claiming elderly or abandoned properties under fake HOA expansions, filing for maintenance deductions, and flipping them online. He looked up at me. "Your case just opened a federal investigation, so she's going away for good." "Oh yeah," Martinez said. "Between the fraud, the arson attempt, and the insurance scam we're uncovering, she's not seeing daylight again." Rebecca joined us a few minutes later, her boots splashing through the mud. "FBI's taking full control," she said, smiling. "You're officially cleared. Property reverts to you immediately." Miguel, who'd been silent the whole time, finally grinned. "Guess the HOA is under new management." I laughed, but it came out tired. "Yeah, President Carter, first rule, no meetings, no fees, and no psychopaths." We packed up the last of the documents, locking the cabin behind us. As I turned the key, I caught a glimpse of something carved into the doorframe, a phrase scratched in with a knife. "The mountain belongs to me." I traced the letters with my thumb, then shook my head. Not anymore. That night, I got one final call from Martinez. We're expanding the case. Turns out your HOA queen's been busy. We've tied her to at least 4 suspicious deaths involving elderly homeowners, all with insurance policies naming her as beneficiary. My heart sank. You're saying she's killed people. It's looking that way. We'll know more soon. You did good, Frank. You didn't just save your property. You might have stopped a serial predator. I hung up and stared at the dark window, my reflection faint against the city lights. For weeks, I'd been fighting for wood and nails, but now I realized it wasn't about property. It was about power, the kind that hides behind titles, smiles, and HOA rules. And for the first time since this all began, I slept without fear, because Haley Turner's reign was over. When the FBI sealed off the property, I thought the story was over. The HOA queen had been dethroned, her son arrested, and every local gossip page finally moved onto new drama. For the first time in months, my mountain felt quiet, but silence has a way of hiding unfinished business. 3 weeks later, I got a call from Agent Martinez. Frank, we're done with the forensic sweep. You're clear to start repairs. But he hesitated. You might want to prepare yourself. We found some things. That's not the kind of sentence you ever want to hear about your own house. The next morning, I drove back up the winding road to Woodland Park. The air smelled of pine and rain, clean, peaceful, deceptive. The cabin stood there like a ghost of itself. Windows boarded the door, sealed with yellow tape that read, Federal Investigation. Miguel met me halfway up the trail, a thermos of coffee in one hand. You ready, boss? Not really, I said, but let's see what's left. We pried the tape loose and stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Mildew, burnt wood, and something metallic underneath. The living room was gutted insulation, torn out drywall, smashed floorboards warped from water damage. Miguel whistled. Man, she really tried to erase herself. We moved slowly from room to room, photographing every corner. Near the kitchen, I noticed a section of wall that looked wrong. The boards were newer, nailed unevenly, like someone had patched it in a hurry. Help me with this, I said. We grabbed crowbars and pulled off the boards. Behind them was Asmal crawl space, barely 2 feet deep. A faded metal lockbox sat inside, covered in dust. Miguel exhaled. Please tell Meth it's not another insurance form. I pried it open carefully. Inside were envelopes, dozens of them, each labeled in Haley's handwriting. Grant Harold Simmons L. Evans M. Turner HOA confidential receipts. Beneath the folders was something even stranger. A leather-bound journal with HT embossed on the cover. I opened it. The first page read in Haley's elegant cursive community is about control. Without order, people destroy beauty. I bring order. I take what others waste. Miguel frowned. That's not a journal. That's a manifesto. The next few hours were a blur. We boxed up everything and drove straight to the FBI field office in Colorado Springs. Agent Martinez met us in the lobby, eyebrows rising when he saw the stack. Good Lord, he muttered. You weren't kidding. He flipped through the envelopes, whistling low when he saw the names. These are all verified victims. Some deceased, some missing. I repeated. Yeah. Seniors who supposedly moved out of state, sold their homes, left no forwarding address. He opened one envelope labeled Evans M. Inside was a notarized property transfer forged with the same looping signature I'd seen before. Martinez shook his head. She wasn't just squatting. She was running an inheritance laundering scheme. Claim the property through fake HOA jurisdiction, beautify it, then sell or rent it under new LLCs. And if the original owner died conveniently, even better. I felt my stomach twist. And all those times she called herself a caretaker for the elderly cover story. Martinez said it gave her access and sympathy. We've confirmed at least 4 deaths linked to her. All labeled natural, all insured, all beneficiaries traced back to her aliases. That night, I couldn't sleep. The mountain wind howled outside my apartment window like a voice that wouldn't shut up. I kept thinking about Harold Grant, the name on that first folder. Haley had called him a lonely old man who needed help. But now, looking back, maybe she was the one who needed him as her next target. At 2 a.m., I found myself driving back to the cabin again. The stars were blinding, the road empty. When I parked, the night was so quiet it felt staged. I walked to the back porch and sat on the steps staring at the dark treine. For the first time, I didn't feel anger, just a deep, cold sadness. Haley's voice echoed in my head. I bring order. People like her never think they're villains. They think they're cleaning up the mess. The next morning, I met Rebecca at her office. She looked exhausted but triumphant. FBI is building a federal case: mail fraud, insurance fraud, tax evasion, identity theft, elder abuse. They'll be charging her with all of it. She'll never get out right. Rebecca nodded. Life without parole, most likely. And the state's opening a victim compensation fund using the seized assets from her fake HOA bank accounts. You'll get reimbursed for all damages, Miguel grinned. Does that mean we can finally rebuild? Rebecca smiled. Legally, yes. Morally, you might want a priest to bless the place first. We started repairs 2 weeks later. New beams, new roof, fresh wiring. The cabin began to feel alive again. But one afternoon while replacing the baseboards, Miguel found another surprise. Hey Frank, he called from the bedroom. You're going to want to see this. Under the floor, wedged between insulation and plywood, was a USB drive sealed in plastic. I plugged it into my laptop carefully. Dozens of folders appeared, each labeled with dates, video clips, and financial spreadsheets. The videos were surveillance recordings, Haley's own security footage. She'd been filming every visitor, every tenant, every board meeting. Most of it was mundane. Her lecturing, Logan cleaning, writing notes. But one clip dated the year before Harold Grant's death stopped me cold. Haley sat across from an older man, Harold himself, frail, sitting in air recliner. She smiled sweetly. Sign this, Harold. It just lets the HOA cover your maintenance fees. He hesitated, but I thought I owned this cabin outright. She leaned forward, voice honeyed. Of course you do, sweetheart. This just keeps it safe if anything happens to you, he signed. Then she looked directly at the camera and whispered, That's number 3. Miguel swore under his breath. That's murder on tape. I sent the Fileto Martinez immediately. His reply came an hour later. You just gave us the nail in her coffin. A few days later, the story hit national news. Self-proclaimed HOA president accused of multi-state fraud and murder scheme. Haley's mugshot was everywhere. The same smug smile, the same red blazer. Reporters swarmed the area for weeks. The HOA killer headline trended for days, and my cabin became an unwanted landmark. Rebecca called it poetic justice. She built her empire on fake HOA rules, and now the real law owns her. Still, I couldn't help but feel hollow. I'd won, sure. But winning against someone like Haley Turner felt less like victory and more like surviving a storm. When the legal dust settled, the FBI returned the recovered funds to victims' families. One afternoon, Martinez called. We've traced a small trust she set up under the name Community Restoration Fund. It's technically yours now. You can do whatever you want with it. I thought about that for a long time. That weekend, Miguel and I drove up to the rebuilt cabin. The sun dipped low, painting the sky orange and pink. I looked at the porch, now fixed and shining, and said quietly, Let's make it what it was supposed to be, a refuge, not a crime scene. We decided to turn the cabin into a community retreat for families who'd lost property to fraud or disasters. Rebecca helped with the paperwork. Martinez even showed up at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, smiling in his crisp gray suit. He raised a glass of cider. To Frank Carter, the only man to bring down an HOA without ever attending a meeting. Everyone laughed, but I just smiled quietly because deep down I knew the truth. This wasn't about a house. It was about reclaiming something Haley tried to take. Not just property, but peace. And as the wind moved through the pines that evening, it didn't sound like ghosts anymore. It sounded like closure. If you've never been in a federal courtroom, let me tell you, it doesn't feel like justice. It feels like waiting. Endless hours of people in suits whispering over paperwork that could change your life. But that day in Denver federal court, when they brought Haley Turner in for arraignment, even the silence had weight. She entered like she was still running a meeting. Same red blazer, same pearl necklace, hair perfectly curled. You'd think she was there to approve landscaping budgets, not face 4 counts of fraud, forgery, tax evasion, arson, and second-degree murder. The courtroom filled with whispers as she sat down, chin-high eyes darting around the room until they found me. Her smile widened, slow, deliberate, poisonous. Mr. Carter, she said softly, loud enough for the microphones. Still trespassing where you don't belong, I see. I didn't respond, but inside I felt something I hadn't felt since the day this started control. The prosecution laid out the evidence like a demolition crew. Emails, fake HOA documents, financial ledgers, insurance forms, witness statements, and then the pièce de résistance, the USB drive I'd found hidden under the floorboards. Special Agent Luis Martinez took the stand. He was calm, professional, and lethal with details. Mrs. Turner created a fraudulent homeowners association as a front for financial crimes, he explained. She used false annexation documents to claim properties filed fake tax exemptions and collected unreported income through short-term rentals. The defense tried to interrupt some nonsense about voluntary community oversight, but Martinez didn't even blink. Then the courtroom lights dimmed and the clerk played the video. Haley leaning over elderly Harold Grant, persuading him to sign a maintenance agreement. Her voice dripped with charm. That's number 3. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Haley's face twitched for the first time, just for a second. Then she straightened, eyes hard as glass. The prosecutor paused the clip. Mrs. Turner, would you like to explain what you meant by number 3? Haley smiled faintly. It was a bookkeeping note, third maintenance file that week. The prosecutor raised an eyebrow. Funny, because Mr. Grant died 2 days later, and you filed a life insurance claim in your own name. Haley's lips pressed together. No response. I was called to testify next. Sitting in that witness chair, I thought I'd be nervous. Instead, I felt calm. Maybe because I'd already lived through the worst parts of her story. The prosecutor asked me to describe our first encounter. I told Thiegery about the SUV, the fake signs, the arrogance, the way she'd declared, "This property belongs to the HOA." A few jurors laughed quietly. The judge didn't stop them. Then came the photos, her Airbnb listings, the forged annexation, the fake HOA letterhead. Every image was another brick in the wall closing in around her. The defense tried to rattle me, claiming I'd harassed Haley. "Mr. Carter," the defense attorney said, pacing dramatically, "did you ever raise your voice at my client?" "Yes," I said. "Once, when her son was vandalizing my property at midnight, laughter from the gallery again. Even the judge smirked." The turning point came when Samantha Turner, Haley's daughter, took the stand. She looked fragile, a shadow of the confident woman her mother pretended to be. She clutched a small cross necklace and stared at the floor before speaking. "My mother always said the HOA was about control," she began. "But really, it was about money and fear. She'd tell us, people respect authority. If you act like the law, they'll obey you." The defense objected hearsay, but the judge waved it off. Samantha continued, voice trembling. "I found her notes, the names, the insurance policies. She said old people wasted their houses. She was just taking care of them." Then she looked straight at her mother. "You weren't taking care of anyone, Mom. You were killing them." The courtroom went dead quiet. Haley didn't flinch, didn't blink. She simply adjusted her pearl necklace and whispered, "Order must be maintained." It sent a chill through everyone in that room. After lunch, the defense called Deputy Rick Davis, Haley's old ally in the sheriff's office. He shuffled to the stand, looking guilty enough to sink himself. "Deputy." The prosecutor said, "Did you ever knowingly assist Mrs. Turner in filing false property reports?" Rick hesitated. "I might have ignored a few complaints. She said it was community business. I didn't know how deep it went." The prosecutor nodded. "You received payments labeled HOA contributions, correct?" Rick swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am." Haley glared at him like he'd just betrayed a sacred oath. By the time he stepped down, the jury's faces told me everything. The Queen's castle was crumbling, and even her guards were abandoning her. The closing arguments were brutal. The prosecutor described Haley's world as a kingdom of lies built on fake bylaws and real blood. The defense tried one last desperate angle, claiming Haley suffered from delusional disorder associated with authority fixation. The judge wasn't buying it. When it was Haley's turn to speak, she stood still, proud, still poised, and delivered a speech that might have won an Oscar if it weren't dripping with narcissism. "You all think I'm a criminal," she began, "but I built something pure. Order, respect, structure. Without me, people like him," she pointed at me, "ruined communities. I kept things beautiful." She spread her hands dramatically. "I'm not guilty of greed. I'm guilty of trying to make people better." A juror audibly scoffed. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Turner, are you saying you improved this community by defrauding and murdering its residents?" Haley smiled thinly. "They were ungrateful and unfit to manage what they had." The deliberation took less than an hour. When the jury returned, no one needed to speak. The look on their faces said it all. The foreman stood. "We find the defendant guilty on all counts." The judge nodded slowly. "Mrs. Turner, you are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment without parole for fraud, forgery, and 4 counts of murder. Additionally, 40 years for federal tax and mail fraud. Sentences to run consecutively." Haley didn't move, didn't even blink. But when the bailiff stepped forward, her composure finally cracked. She turned to me, eyes blazing. "This isn't over, Mr. Carter. The mountain still belongs to me." The judge banged the gavel. "That will be enough." She was escorted out, still shouting HOA bylaws like commandments. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed, microphones shoved in my face. "Mr. Carter, how does it feel to take down the HOA president? Are you planning to sell the cabin now that it's infamous? Did you know she was capable of murder?" I just smiled wearily. "I didn't buy a cabin for fame. I bought it for peace. Guess I had to earn it the hard way." Rebecca laughed beside me. "You just made federal history, Frank. HOA fraud's going to have your name on the training manual." Agent Martinez joined us, hands in his pockets. "You did good, Carter. Most people would have walked away. You stayed until the truth showed up." "Yeah," I said quietly. But I think the mountain taught me more than any courtroom ever could. He raised an eyebrow. Like what? That some people don't build communities. They build cages. Weeks later, when the news cycle moved on, I drove back up to the cabin. The sun dipped behind the pines. And for the first time, there was no tension in the air. No cameras, no fake HOA signs, no manipulation, just windbirds and silence. On the porch, I'd placed a small wooden plaque in memory of Harold Grant. A good neighbor deserved better. As I stood there watching the sunset bleed across the horizon, Miguel stepped up beside me. "You ever think about how crazy this all was?" he asked. "Every day," I said. "But I also think about how she lost." He grinned. "So what now, President Carter?" I laughed. "Now I think I'll finally build that porch swing." And as I sat there listening to the creak of wood beneath me, I realized something simple and profound. You can rebuild walls, repaint houses, underplant gardens. But peace, real peace, only grows when you take back what fear tried to steal. And that mountain finally belonged to me again. When the trial ended, reporters eventually stopped calling. The FBI packed up their files, and the world moved on to its next outrage. But I didn't. Because when you've had your peace stolen, you can't just buy it back. You have to rebuild it from the foundation up. For the first time in months, I drove to the mountain without dread in my chest. The snow was melting off the peaks. Birds were returning and the air smelled like pine instead of gasoline. The cabin stood at the top of the trail, scarred, but still standing like an old soldier who'd survived too many battles. Miguel met me there with his truck loaded with lumber and tools. He handed me a hammer with agrin. "You ready to make this place yours again, boss?" "More than ever," I said. We started early, stripping out the charred wood, replacing window frames, patching the roof. It was exhausting, filthy work, but every nail I drove felt like reclaiming something. Every plank laid down was a little victory over the ghost of Haley Turner. By mid-afternoon, Rebecca arrived with coffee and a stack of papers. "Officially filed," she said, handing me a folder. "The deed's clean, no liens, no HOA, anything. You're the only name on it now," I laughed. "Finally. After all that, I'm just a homeowner again." She smiled. "A homeowner with an FBI case named after him. That's a first." Miguel chimed in. "We should get you a plaque. The man who beat the HOA." Rebecca grinned. Or better, HOA humbled on arrival. Well-offed until the wind swallowed the sound. The kind of laugh you only have when something dark has finally ended. Over the next few weeks, word spread through the town that the cabin was being restored. People who once avoided me, the same folks who'd believed Haley's sob stories online, started showing up. Some brought sandwiches, others offered paint. A few even apologized. One older man, Mr. Lawson, told me he'd lost his brother's home to Haley's fake HOA transfer. "She had everyone fooled," he said. "You're the first who didn't back down." That stuck with me because that was what Haley counted on. Fear, compliance, silence. She didn't need a gun or a knife, just a clipboard, a smile, and a title. And for years it worked. One afternoon, while cleaning out the storage shed, Miguel found an old water-damaged wooden sign buried under debris. He wiped the dirt off, revealing carved letters, Harold Grant, 1978. We stood there in silence. That was Theman, whose life Haley had stolen, whose cabin she'd claimed as her community project. "Let's fix this up," Miguel said softly. We sanded and sealed it, then mounted it on the porch beside the new door. Underneath, I added a brass plate for those who lost their homes to lies. May they find peace again. That evening, the sunset hit the brass just right, and it glowed like gold. A few days later, I got an unexpected visitor. A small car pulled up the gravel path, and a young woman stepped out. It was Samantha Turner, Haley's daughter. She looked healthier than I remembered. Her hair tied back a soft steadiness in her eyes. "I heard you rebuilt it," she said quietly. I nodded. "You helped make that possible." "Without your testimony, she'd still be pretending to run the mountain." Samantha smiled sadly. "I've started therapy. The FBI helped me relocate to Texas. They said I should come see it one last time for closure." We walked around the cabin in silence for a while. Then she stopped in front of the porch sign and whispered. She used to say, control was love, but it wasn't. It was just fear wearing nice clothes. I looked at her, surprised by her calm. "You did the right thing, Samantha." Tears filled her eyes. "I didn't do it soon enough. You did it when it mattered." She nodded, then reached into her bag and pulled out a folded envelope. "Agent Martinez wanted me to give you this." Inside was a check restitution from the seized assets, enough to cover their bill and more. But attached was something more valuable. A note written in Martinez's handwriting. "Justice isn't revenge. It's restoration. You built that mountain back. Don't stop now." Those words stuck with me. So, when their build was finished, I didn't just keep the cabin as a personal retreat. I turned it into something bigger, something useful. Rebecca helped me register it as a non-profit retreat for fraud victims called the Harold Grant Lodge. We hosted weekend workshops for homeowners dealing with property scams, seminars on recognizing financial manipulation, and even legal clinics for the elderly. The first night we opened, a dozen people showed up. One man had been scammed out of his retirement condo. Another woman had lost her land to a fake developer. I told them mystery, the HOA signs, the court battles, the lies. And when I finished, there was silence, then applause. An older woman stood up and said, "You didn't just get your house back. You gave all of us a little hope." I looked around at their faces, weary but alive, and realized that maybe that was what Haley could never understand. Control builds cages, but courage, it builds community. Weeks later, Rebecca and Miguel threw what they called the first annual HOA free barbecue. They set up tables in the yard, fairy lights strung from pine to pine. Neighbors laughed, kids ran around, and for the first time in a long time, nobody was checking for violations. Halfway through, Agent Martinez arrived, still in his suit, holding a bottle of sparkling cider. He raised his glass. To Frank Carter, Thiemann who turned HOA horror into mountain hope, everyone cheered. I just shook my head, grinning. "You keep giving me titles, Martinez. I prefer a guy who owns a working roof." He laughed. "Fair enough. But you know this story is going down in training history, right?" "They're calling it the HOA Queen case," Miguel groaned. "Sounds like a bad reality show." Rebecca smirked. "Or a good one. Season 1, Karen versus the Mountain." Even I couldn't resist laughing. Later that night, when everyone had left, I sat alone on the porch, listening to the quiet hum of crickets. The moonlight washed over the valley, silvering the treetops. From where I sat, I could see the reflection of the porch sign, Harold's name, shining softly in the dark. For the first time, the cabin didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt alive. I took out my notebook, the one I used to track repair costs, and wrote a new list at the top of a blank page. Future plans: expand the Harold Grant Lodge to include workshops for small-town law enforcement. Publish a guide on HOA and property fraud prevention. Invite Samantha to speak at next year's event. Keep the mountain open always. I closed the notebook and smiled. For once, there was no dread, no fight, no fear of paperwork or fraud, just purpose. Because maybe that's what this whole journey was about. Not revenge, but redemption. Not proving Haley Turner wrong, but proving something right, that honesty can survive corruption. And even in the ruins of greed, something good can grow. As the night deepened, I whispered to the quiet, "You can rebuild walls. You can even rebuild trust, but peace. Peace you have to earn every day." The wind rustled through the pines as if answering back, gentle and steady. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't the end of a story. It was the beginning of something worth protecting. The Mountain was finally free, and so was I. If there's one thing this whole experience taught me, it's that evil rarely looks like evil. Sometimes it looks like organization, like paperwork, like a smiling neighbor with a clipboard saying, "It's just a rule." But freedom, real freedom, starts the moment you stop letting fear write your story. So if you're watching this and you've ever been pushed around, lied to, or controlled by someone hiding behind authority, remember this: they only win when you stop fighting. Don't give them that victory. Stand your ground. Keep your proof. Know your rights. Because truth might move slow, but it never stops climbing. And when it finally reaches the top, the view is worth every step. If you've ever faced a Karen, a corrupt HOA, or anyone who tried to take what's yours, share your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because every story, no matter how dark, leaves a trace worth telling.